Hey, this is a Hakawati production. My guest today has one of the best accounts on Instagram, in my opinion. Her series of photographs look like cinematic stills that are overlaid with subtitles, stringing together stories of heartbreak and exposing our common fears and insecurities, but in a really honest and relatable way. Her work went viral overnight when she started in 2014 with her breakout series, Sex and Takeout. Since then, she's gone on to produce several series of photographs with titles like Bonjour Bitch and I Love You, Me Neither. She shot DJ Khaled for a cover of GQ Middle East last year, and she's directed several short films and videos, including an ad for Gucci's Guilty fragrance, and just last summer, a super cool music video with Kygo for the remix of Tina Turner's epic hit, What's Love Got to Do with It? She's based in LA, but of Palestinian-Jordanian descent, and she's just released a series called Aib, which translates in English to shame. It's a series of 32 pictures featuring herself, and it's the first time she uses herself as the muse, in fact, and it's also the first time she features an Arab woman and an Arab theme. I'm so happy to have her on the show today. Please welcome Sarah Bahbah. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to the Men's Room.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm in recovery from being sick, but I'm good. Thanks.
Well, you sound great. So really appreciate that you're here. First of all, I'm a huge fan of your work.
Thank you.
I'm sure you get that a lot. I really love the Kygo video you directed, by the way, this summer. That actress, Laura Harrier from the Netflix
Oh my goodness.
series Hollywood, she's amazing, right? She's really good.
She's not just amazing. She's so, like, as a human, she's so beautiful and very, like, sweet. And I really enjoyed working with her. She was, such a blessing to have on set.
Yeah, you can see that when she's acting. It really comes across like there's something kind of magical about her. And that's in that song, What's Love Got to Do with It, fits so well with your work because it basically spells out the truth about what we call love in a way. Right? I don't know. Did you think that?
Yeah, I think it's I mean, when you compare, I think the problem with us is we get confused between what's lust and what's love. And sometimes, toxic love comes in all forms and we perceive that as like unconditional love or true love or whatnot. But I think there's so many realms of love.
Definitely.
and the song What's Love actually questions that. And I think it's really cool.
Yeah. And I feel like you choose your collaborations very carefully. So kudos to you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it takes a lot to create. So like to make any form of art, I feel like it knocks me out for 6 months. So I just want to make sure that whatever projects I take on, I'm like very excited about it. I have a story to tell and it'll be worth the recovery afterwards.
I don't think people realize that though, that it's that much work. Is it like an intense schedule? Like, why does it knock you out for 6 months?
It's because it's so emotional for me. My process is very internal, and I can't really create art unless I'm like overcoming an experience or I really do. I create based on like wanting to heal like the wounds that I have, and so that work that it takes to get to that place of feeling like you're able to lift the negative energy around an experience that knocks me out. It's so exhausting because you have to constantly be immersed in it in order to be able to create an authentic story that people can connect to.
Yeah, and I think that's the secret to your success. You're so authentic, and people really relate to that. And actually, I and many of my friends around the world fell in love at first sight with your work from the moment that we saw it because of that reason. I think we all kind of get how you feel. You're so good at putting across these emotions that we all have, I think, as human beings. But, and I have one of your prints, by the way, from Sex and Takeout, the one with the girl on the bed eating pizza.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
I love that. And the original picture did really well, right? Didn't it sell for like 20,000?
The max it sold for was like 25,000 or something.
That's
Maybe even
amazing.
30. I can't remember. It was a while ago, but
That's
yeah, it was a
amazing.
lot.
I'm sure people don't think it like like you're so successful on Instagram, but the fact is that you're, a collected photographer, artist photographer. So, yeah, I think that's worth reminding people of. So, tell us about Ibe. I don't know if I said that right.
I also struggle to say it because of my Australian accent, but yeah. So Ebb was a series I created for my I guess myself. It was you know, it's quarantine kind of put me in a state. Like the pandemic, I deactivated Instagram for 2 months and I really just wanted to do some like self-reflection and, go deeper than I already have. And something that I was struggling with is like my confidence in what I look like. And my relationship with my body has always been very harsh and very brutal. And I've never really been kind to myself. And I've never really like been able to embrace what I look like or I guess like how I exist in the physical space. And so I took the next 2 months off Instagram. I completely deactivated and disconnected, and I was in the desert. And I just like I started asking myself questions I never really have before. And I'm like, what is it that you believe about what you look like? Do you think you're ugly? Like, when did you first like make that belief? And I had to go so deep in it. And I asked, it all went back to my childhood. And, I was like severely bullied in primary school. And, I grew up in Australia, and when you're Arab and everyone is just like, traditional, like Eurocentric, white, blue-eyed, blonde hair, and then you come in as this like frizzy haired, like brown kid. And I feel like I was just isolated, and I got bullied a lot. And so I just never felt like I was safe in white spaces. And so like, my audience is predominantly, well, it used to be predominantly white. And so I always catered to like the white, gaze, as opposed to just like diversifying. And I was just so completely whitewashed because of, the way I grew up. And so when I created Ebb, I was like, how do I get to a place where I'm comfortable to be in front of the camera? And what's that going to take? What does that look like? And so I began that process. And I basically took every story that I've ever told and I integrated it into this one series. And instead of using a non-Arab talent, I used myself. And and yeah, it basically feels like a collection of 28 years of my life in a set of 31 photographs.
Oh,
Yeah.
31. I thought it was 32. Yeah, I mean, so you not only used yourself, you added Arabic subtitles, which was new, which is super interesting because, there's a whole world that you're connecting with now that are not necessarily interested in anything in English. So this is really speaking to them in a whole new way. And then the food you show is Arabic, and the cast and the crew were all Middle Eastern and North African. So you really went all out with the Arab theme, right?
Yeah.
And I think that of course you touch on the same themes again of or what you talked about feeling like you never felt satisfied with your appearance. This is something I think that resonates not just with women, but I know a lot of guys feel that way too, especially today with all the pressure that we have to look a certain way. So
Yeah.
the intensity that you present that with, I think, really makes people think about how kind of ridiculous it all is in a way. At the same time, you feel that way. You're like, yeah, I feel that way. And then when everyone realizes that everyone feels that way, you kind of like, well, why are we all feeling this way? So I think you're doing a service to
Yeah.
society. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
So
I think I mean there are such unattainable standards, especially with Instagram and like these filters. And no one is no longer comfortable looking at themselves in the camera, like in the selfie camera, without putting a filter filter on top of them. And like that to me is the craziest thing. Like we're adapting so quickly to technology and these unrealistic high standards of like Western beauty. And if we don't look like that, then we feel like we don't belong. But the reality is like that standard is unattainable. It's completely like it's it's messing with all of our heads.
Don't be
And
shy with the language. We're free here.
I wasn't sure.
Yes, I know what you were gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's so true. And what's interesting is your photos are beautiful, and the people in your photos are beautiful, and you look beautiful. But they're not filtered and photoshopped in the same way most of the stuff we see on Instagram, which is one of the reasons they stand out. But I mean, you're totally right. I think if aliens use Instagram to try to figure out what humans look like, they'll be pretty surprised when they get here, I think.
Yeah, that'd be super disappointed.
For sure. I love also you have one picture that you did, or maybe you've taken several pictures of yourself on bathroom counters from behind, or is that just one
Yep.
picture? The Not Your Habibti, or Mish Habibti in Arabic?
Yeah, I started this series just like while I was traveling Europe over the past few years, where I would just take like a really sexy bathroom selfie, and I was like intending to eventually do an exhibition of just like bathroom selfies and make it my own. But it just ended up just being like a side personal thing. But when I released that print, I was feeling kind of brave, and this was like I released it when when I got back onto Instagram after having been away for 2 months and having done all that work. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna see how my audience feels about my body on Instagram. So it was almost like a test because I'd never done it before. And it honestly, it was received so well. I ended up breaking a record for print sales, and I was like, okay, cool. This is the confidence boost I need to release M.
Yeah. You sold like
Yeah.
thousands of those, right? And you offered them, like, it was interesting the way you priced them. You were pricing them, I think, from 50 for the prints, $50 to $300. 300 is what you usually sell your prints for. And basically
Yeah.
said like whatever you can pay. So when you do something like that, do people actually pay the $300 if they know they can get it for 50?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, not most people. I want to say like 15% of people pay the max, and then like 25% pay like more than the minimum, and then everyone else pays the minimum. But honestly, like for me, I just, I have a problem with the traditional art world, and I feel like it's very elitist, and the top 1% are just like I how do I say this nicely? They're all just like jacking each other off, and they're like, I own this person's art, and I'm this, and I collected this, and I was the first to collect it. And it's all about like status when it comes to the traditional art world, and it's not really about. Well, I personally, it is a very much white space catered to like the billionaires, and so when art is that inaccessible, it kind of like takes away from, the authenticity and the connection people have with art, because like how are they going to connect to a piece that some white man has in his storage cabinet in the fucking middle of like New Jersey? And I just want to challenge the art world in this way, because like I'm not going to wait around for this notoriety from these like museums that are all white led and that don't give women in general much space, let alone like brown or black women. And it's just like how can I challenge this, like these traditions? How can I like push past it? And so I went from being in these galleries and doing all these international art fairs to being like, fuck that, I'm just going to do it myself. I'm going to use my Instagram platform to start like a base of collectors and just give it to them for like whatever they can pay. And I don't want it to be about the money. I want it to be about the connection people have to the art being made. And like, why should art have a value number on it to determine how successful the artist is or not, And so like, I wanted to move away from that idea that like the more expensive the art is, the more valuable the artist is. And I wanted to say, no, like, let's make the art as low as possible, but let me show you how impactful I am,
Definitely.
and how impactful this art is. Yeah. And so that's why I've done pay what you can. Cause like, it doesn't, it shouldn't be about the money. It should be about the work. And that's the reality.
Yeah, I really don't see it as devaluing your work at all. Actually, I thought it was really cool, and it's kind of like a democratic way of doing it, and a way that's really, like as you said, showing that you're not doing the art just to elevate yourself to this like iconic realm. It's you're really doing it in an authentic way. But that picture also, I just want to say, like, I really love the caption that you put. You said, "Good morning to everyone except those who don't appreciate booty for breakfast." So that's pretty bold. Your work is quite overtly sexual, let's be honest, and
Yeah.
especially for the Arab world, and not your habibti. That's pretty bold. Do you get a lot of blowback for your work, and especially with Aib, have you gotten a lot of negative feedback?
So I when I released it on my Instagram, it was only love. It was so positive the entire time. Maybe there was like one or two comments where people were like, "Oh, why are you using like you know textbook Arabic? There's no like slang in it and whatnot." But that was a decision we actively made because we wanted it to be mostly in Fusha. Like we wanted people to be able to read it from every region. But like I personally like only understand like Palestinian slang like the best. But then like I guess like when I was working with the translators, it was just a decision we made together to just like use that specific Arabic instead of like going more slang and being more relatable because we wanted it to be, what's nationally recognized by
Yeah,
the Arab world.
yeah,
So
that makes sense.
yeah, so I think that was the only negative feedback I got to start. And then as the series finished and, some Palestinian accounts started like putting it, on their platforms and more Arabs were seeing it. Um, I did, even this week, I recently got berated with messages and comments from, I want to say Arab Muslim men who who kind of they obviously didn't appreciate it, and they called me everything under the sun, and there lots of ebb, lots of shame, but like this is what we prepared for, and these reactions were completely expected, and I feel like with that in mind, like I can't take it personally because we know like the reason why I'm doing this series in the first place is to eliminate the guilt and shame I feel around wanting to be liberated and wanting to speak freely about my sexuality and my desires and my indulgences, and like I really truly like created Ebb to embody like what embody myself and my journey and my beliefs and as a Western Arab. And so I know that's entirely different for women and men who come from the Middle East, because I grew up in the Western world as an Arab, and so I only can tell my story, and that's what I did, and obviously it's going to offend a lot of people, and it's also going to inspire a lot of people, and I'm super happy that I did the work.
Yeah. Um, there's actually a shot where you're actually pleasuring yourself, which is really can be shocking to a lot of people, even white people. So what about, like, I'm sure you got blowback as you mentioned, but what about your family?
Um, my family. So I had to call all my siblings and my cousins before I released the series, and I was just like, "All right, guys, we have to work together to make sure Mom never sees this." And she hasn't yet, and I know if she does, she will be extremely devastated. She might not talk to me again. So uh, yeah, it's tough because, a lot of the guilt and shame that I have around my identity and my desires have stemmed from the fear of God and like my mom's put in my head. And, we were raised to believe sex is bad and until you're married. And like I couldn't even like put my, this sounds super weird to say, but like when I was a kid, I would keep my hands in my pants. And that was like, oh, when I was going to sleep. And that was like my subconscious way of protecting myself because of the things that were happening to me behind closed doors. And I remember one time Mom was like, "Sarah, you can't keep your hands in your pants." And like she comes and removes them. And it was just confusing to me because I thought I was protecting myself by doing that. And so yeah, it was just like, and we weren't allowed to wear tampons because like anything inserted up your vagina was bad. And like, um, yeah, there was just this whole eerie like taboo around like our body. And like, like we weren't allowed to feel connected to our own genitals essentially. And that to me is, that's wild. Like to have so much guilt and shame around something that is a part of you is, you know, that's really hard to overcome. And so it takes so much work. And like, for me to be able to sit there and say I had to pleasure myself twice today just to wake up, like that took years of undoing these harsh beliefs that I really truly believe that I wasn't allowed to say these things because I would be condemned to hell. and and that's not nice. That's not kind. Like we as women should be able to celebrate every part of ourselves. And it doesn't mean we're like sharmutas or whatever. It literally is just saying like, this is my body, and if I want to touch it, I should be able to without feeling weirdness or shame or guilt, you know?
Yeah. But what do you think would happen if a guy posted a picture like that?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I think people would just think it's funny. Maybe
Really?
they
I
just
think
laugh
people
at
would
it.
think it's creepy. I think people would be like, what a pervert. Why is he like doing that? I don't know. I've never seen any guy like, I mean,
Yeah, actually, I agree with you. That would be super weird, but like, yeah, I guess there's stigma around that too for men. But the thing is, it was the men who enforced these rules on us to begin with. So, like, to see a woman kind of fight against the patriarchy is a beautiful thing.
yeah, I can see where you're going from, coming from. But you mentioned that that you were trying to protect yourself, which brings me to the next question, which is about this video that you released, where you're reciting a poem in a bubble bath, basically. Just to
Yeah.
set the scene, there's a bubble bath. You have this beautiful pink, like vintage looking bathtub, by the way. Is that in your house?
No, it was a blue bathtub for
Oh,
this
blue,
scene,
pink,
but
blue. I'm
yeah.
colorblind, obviously. It looked pink to me.
No,
No. Okay, blue. It was a vintage pastel color. That's what I remember.
yeah, it's a pastel blue. There was a pastel pink Sheesha. Maybe that's where the pink comes in. Argile. Yeah. What would you like to know about it?
And you're eating knefe, I think, in that series, right?
Yeah, yeah, I am.
Looks so good. So I want to play a little piece of that poem and ask you about it after.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah.
I think about dying all the time. What you did to me as a child, disconnected from this earth because of your crime. You think I don't remember, even till this day. But don't you see, you gave it away. When you looked me in the eye, when you passed the hallway, moaning as I undressed. I'm sorry, Mom. I can't stay.
Is this poem about you, or does it refer to someone you know?
It's about me and someone in my family.
Yeah. So so you're basically bringing attention to child abuse, which is really important topic that people talk a lot more about. I think in the U.S. and the Arab world, it's not really something that people ever talk about. But
Yeah.
it's worth pointing out that around 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 16 boys, is that the figures you've read, have suffered
Yeah.
some form of sexual abuse?
Yeah. Yeah. The numbers are really high, and the thing is, it happens to more, like if you're in a group of 5 people, the chances of one of them having been like childly abused as a child is really high. And that's the thing, like we're constantly like moving around, we're seeing people, and no one really like knows their story and their journey. And most people who have been abused as children tend to not even remember, depending on like the age it started happening. And so this stuff will always come up later. It manifests into like your behavior and your patterns and like your desires, and like it needs to be like nipped in the butt from the start. And I think parents especially don't have the language or the we aren't given the tools as like parents to be able to know what to say to your child if that's happened, and like what treatment to put them in, and like it's because it's still such a stigma, and this is why we need to talk about it, so like, you know, that conversation does happen, and that parents are able to then talk to their children and know exactly what to say to them, to know that they're safe to talk about what's happening to them if it's happening behind closed doors, you know. But this language is yet to become norm, and it's not accessible, it's not easily accessible, so it's just like we need to do a better job about talking about it, and then like having this dialogue available for every single parent, even if they don't think something's happening,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that happened to you, but thank you for bringing it up in such an engaging way. You know, of course, sexual abuse is such a profound violation of children's rights, and I think
Yeah.
basically like the worst, most disgusting thing a human being could do. You know, little kids. So, but to continue and move on, I know that you've said that you listen to music when you're working on a project. What did
Yeah.
you listen to as music for this one for IBE?
um what did I listen to? I mean, I actually have the Spotify playlist in front of me. One sec. um So I actually created AB when I was going through a bit of a not a breakup, but I had like a situation I was ending, and there's there's a whole playlist that I had on repeat. So it's not really relevant to the series, but it was just there when I was creating it. But it's there's a lot of emotional oranges on there, and
Emotional Oranges?
yeah, great band. You have to listen to
You have
them.
great taste in music,
Um,
by the way, because I've looked at what other music, and I discovered a lot of music today when I was researching what I used to listen to. Like, and I watched that video
yeah,
that you really loved by, what is it called? Impala.
Tame Impala.
Yeah, Tame Impala. And
Yeah,
you recommended this video that you were talking about this video, and I watched it because it's a video. It's such a colorful video, and you really get kind of drawn into the story, and it's quite also, it's similar to your work in some ways. I'm sure it was
yeah,
inspiring for you.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I love the directors for The Less I Know the Better, which is the music video you're talking about, is they're Canada, and they've done incredible work. Like, I love everything that they've produced. So I highly recommend checking them out.
yeah, I like the name too, Canada.
Yeah.
That's where I'm from. But I would love if you shared that playlist with us. So if we
Yeah.
remember to do that afterwards. Your work, as I said, is very colorful. And not only do you use colorful people, you often use, you know, Black people. Now, you know, you have like an Arab series, but they're often also like flowers and food. First of all, I want to ask you, why do you have so much food in your images? What does it represent?
So it represents my love for food. Food is a love language of mine. You know, when I grew up at home, like my mom she's such a giver, she's such a nurturer, and she's such an incredible cook, chef, I want to call her. So every every day, like, we would wake up to just like a home cooked meal. We'd have like our traditional spreads like all available to us at whenever we wanted. We had hummus, full, baba ganoush, we had tahini, we had like just everything, like always in our fridge. And food really is a love language, and it's the way my mom showed us that she loved us, because she wanted to make sure we were cared for and nourished, and like, and so when I use food in my work, it's a celebration of that. And the reason why I celebrate it so much is because I did have a really terrible relationship with food, because, you know, growing up at home, you're being fed and nourished to this extent, but then like you have the Western standards of beauty fighting against you, saying like you can't be curvy, you have to look like a little boy, and like you know, so I struggled with body dysmorphia and eating disorders for like 12 years. And so when I incorporated food in my work for the first time, it was because I wanted to show that I'm I'm in this like recovery process. I'm healing. I'm learning to love my relationship with food again. And I shouldn't feel guilt or shame for wanting to indulge and eat what I want, because these come from my roots. Like we are raised to express ourselves through food and with love, you know?
Yeah, well, you sure make food look really sexy, I'm just gonna say.
Thank you.
What about cigarettes? There's also a lot of smoking going on in your work. Do you smoke?
Yeah.
No, of course not,
um
mom.
no. I mean, I socially definitely smoke. I smoke more weed than anything. But I also like, I do everything in moderation now. When I was younger, I abused everything, and now I'm just like very responsible about it. So
That's good to know.
yeah.
So you're Jordanian Palestinian, but you grew up in Australia, like many other Palestinians who were forced to leave their homeland because they were basically robbed of everything they owned in their own country, including any viable future. So, from
Yeah.
your perspective as a creative who makes their living in the public sphere, what is the single biggest difference between these two worlds, the East and the West, the Middle East, Australia, the Middle East, and LA?
Oh gosh. Oh, that's a tough question. I would need to think about that. Honestly, I don't want to just spit out an answer. I feel like
Do you
the
think you
West
could do what you do there if you were in the still living in the Middle East, if you lived in Amman, for example, or in Dubai?
I mean, I can't speak to that because I never have. Like my parents didn't take us back, so I don't know what that would be like. I can only speak from my experiences, and I know that I recognize that I have such a privilege simply being able to exist as a Palestinian in a Western space. Um, and I have access to way more resources, and I have more freedom because the culture that I'm in, the Western culture, doesn't guilt and shame women for being assertive and being more vocal. Whereas, I know just simply based on like existing at home that I can't say these things even to my parents without feeling guilt or shame. So I know there is a difference in terms of like what is accepted, and I recognize that being in the Western world, I do have a privilege as an Arab woman.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that I think that if you were doing what you do in any of the cities I mentioned, or most cities across the Middle East, you probably would have been arrested by now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that for a fact. Like, the women in even in Egypt are still getting arrested for doing like very innocent dance videos on TikTok. Like there's so much work that needs to be done. It's
Yeah. I
crazy.
wonder how this affects
Yeah.
people. Like, sometimes, we know that when people try to censor things, it makes you even more want to, do bad things, and it has the opposite effect. So I wonder how it affects, societies to have this kind of censorship. It'd be interesting to kind of analyze all the behaviors of people based on, what they see, what they watch. But I guess that would be a hard study to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're seeing it over time, regardless. Like
Yeah.
I think people are becoming stronger in asserting their voices, and we're all actively, collectively, as women and as Arab women, fighting to be heard and to be seen and to be liberated, and Black women too. And I mean, yeah, it's a huge fight, and we're all on this journey together and separately, but together.
Yeah. Yes. So, Sarah, as someone who has clearly thought a lot about love and kind of scrutinized failed relationships, do you still believe in love? Or are we as a species just driven by like primal instincts and survival? And we've kind of been brainwashed into this romantic idea of love, which never seems to work out, especially at least in your stories. Do you think it's something that's been created to help sell movies and maybe even photographs?
My relationship with love is a work in progress. I think we are all love. We are all born into this world as like a bowl of love. And then as we move through time and experiences, we create all these harsh beliefs that stem from hatred, and they kind of take over. And so we're like, our core is love, and then imagine an onion core, and then suddenly all these layers are being built on top of love. And it kind of like every layer is hatred and like a negative belief we have about ourselves. and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and suddenly we're these giant fucking onions moving around, and we're no longer existing as love. We're existing with like such heavy ego that's so harsh and cruel and mean to ourselves. And so we're all trying to find this thing called love, but we have so much shit in the way. And so I think love really does exist, but in order to experience it, you have to find it within yourself. And so you have to go through the work, you have to do the work and like uncover all these harsh beliefs and go back to your core as love. And in order for it to be successful with in partnership, you need to make sure the person that you're going into partnership is also doing the work to go back to their core of love. And if you two can simply exist as love and be completely aware of where these layers came from and where these beliefs came from, then you're going to have a very successful relationship, because you would have learned that communication is key, not just with the person in front of you, but with yourself. And like being able to have that conversation, like, oh, I'm feeling this way because it triggered this wound. And so I'm going to nurture it with love today, with the love of my core. Like there's so many things that I feel about this, and I'm still working on it. And, you know, it's failed so many times in my life because I've thought like, oh, I've done the work. But then like the universe is like, no, you haven't. Keep going. You still have this cycle you need to break. And yeah, I feel a lot of things.
That's such a good, an interesting way of thinking of it, of thinking of ourselves as onions with layers that need to be peeled back, and that we have all this common core. That's a really good visual.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
you're welcome.
So you obviously have shared so much of your soul with the world. Are there any downsides to doing that, to sharing yourself so publicly like this, both physically and emotionally?
I would say the downside is it just, like I said at the start, I really do get knocked out. Cause like when I'm in this process, I'm at rock bottom and like of creating, and it really pains me to be able to have to face everything that I'm feeling, just cause I'm really good at compartmentalizing. And so like the darkness, it becomes overbearing. And when it's at that point, that's when I have to face it. And so I'll go through that process for like a few months, and then once my project is finished, I'll stare at it for a while, and I'll make sure that I'm mentally in the right headspace to release it. And then I do. And then once I release it, it's no longer mine, because the process and the creating it is mine. But when I put it out there, I have to make sure I'm removed from it at this point, because if I take in everyone else's like energy towards it, then it'll really, really deplete me. So like I kind of just like put it out there. I use Instagram as a tool to just give it to the world. And then like I have to personally disconnect, because it hurts too much to have to like experience my own emotions and then like everyone else's responses too, you know?
Yeah, because actually, you know, everyone is kind of interpreting it in their own way, and so it's not. There's no point really. But don't you ever worry that then when you meet people after you do work like that, that they think that you're that person and maybe you're not, or maybe you've changed, or maybe you're worried that, well, they already know me, then why would they want to get to know me better? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't really have that concern. I think like, you know, we as humans have so many layers and like so many stories, and if I confine myself to one series that I've done and people label me as that, then that's just like ignorant of them, you know? Like I have so many sides. I have so many stories, and like I'm not just one thing that I make. And anyone who would assume that would just be like, I feel like ignorant. Like, and you know, we're also multifaceted, and
we're
think
all
like
multifaceted onions.
Yeah, and when I speak about like my traumas and my experiences, like I'm speaking about them because I've overcome them. I'm overcoming them, but they're a part of me, but they're not who I am. Like I soared past that, and I have so many sides. I'm not just like this trauma anxious depressed girl. I'm fucking like boss bitch entrepreneur too, and like whatever. I'm a nurturer. I'm a mom to my friends. Like there's so many sides to me personally, and we as humans, we all have that. We all have like our elements, and it's amazing. I love that we can be so diverse.
Yes, and you certainly are a boss bitch entrepreneur, for sure. A lot of these motivational figures that are all over social media right now, like, Gary Vee, for example, I'm sure you know who he is. Do you?
No, I don't.
You don't know Gary
No, I don't
Vee?
think so.
Everyone knows Gary Vee. He's like this amazing kind of motivator guy. He has a bunch of businesses. He started out like as a wine critic, but he basically likes to help people grow their social media and stuff. And one of the things that he says, and a lot of people are saying, is like, you have to share yourself in your social media. Just go ahead and grab that camera and connect with people and be yourself. Do you think that this isn't, and it's what you're doing, but you're doing it in a much more creative, artistic, polished way. But in the sense that you're giving of yourself, it's the same. Do you think this is in fact necessary these days in order to stand out from all the content out there, especially if you're someone in the arts?
I think, what do I think about this? I think people need authenticity. People need vulnerability now more than ever, just because social media is so heavily curated to appear perfection, like as perfection, and everyone's so careful about what they post, and everything just seems so structured and conformed. And I think the reason why my work personally connects with so many people is because I'm telling an authentic story that's raw, it's rough, it's like, it's true to what I've been through and my experiences. And so people see it and they connect because they can relate. And so I think what makes social media work and is relatability, uniqueness, and like vulnerability. And like, these are the three things we need in order to connect with each other in real life and like on social. So people don't want to connect with like walls and robots and things that are perfectly facing. They want to connect with what they can relate to. And people can only relate if it's real. And in order to be real, you need to be vulnerable, because society tells us to do everything but that,
Yeah. So what advice would you give to creatives, photographers, artists, writers, anyone who's trying to make a name for themselves on social media in the world? What's the top advice you would give?
The advice I would give is to focus on telling your story. And don't focus on what you think other people want to hear. Just focus on being true to yourself. Figure out what story you want to tell, and then tell that fucking story. Like, that's it. Anything else is like washed. It's like anything else is coming from a place of like thinking that's what you're supposed to do, as opposed to what you're actually supposed to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds simple enough.
Yeah,
it sounds simple, but it's all in the execution.
Just tell your story. Tell your story.
But it's all in the execution, like everything else, like a great business idea is only good if you execute it properly. So same is true, I guess, for what you just said. So it's a combination of all those things. Sarah, what are you working on next?
I am launching a company in a few weeks.
Really? What kind of company?
Yes. I am making I'm making sweatsuits. I'm gonna say that, but like, it's a movement. That's all I'll say.
Okay. Well, we got the scoop, kind of half the scoop here. It sounds really interesting. I can't wait to see.
I can't wait to share it.
Cool. So quite a departure also. So I'm sure it's not just gonna be like, regular sweatpants.
No, you'll see. They're great. It's a lifestyle.
I'm sure they're sexy. For sure.
Yeah, they're cool. Yeah.
It's been so great having you. I feel like I need to hang out with you so that some of your mojo will rub off on me.
Yeah, take it.
Well, thanks again for joining us.
Of course, thanks for having me. This was nice. It was lovely chatting.
It was. And best of luck with everything. Your work is amazing. And I think you're making a lot of people feel better about themselves and inspiring a lot of people. So keep up the great work.
Thank you, love. Have a good day.
You too. That's all, my friends. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I know you're thinking of getting some takeout right now, but be sure to click that subscribe button before you do that, so you'll know when a new episode comes out. See you next time.